everyone. Welcome to our climate talk today. We will discuss about climate justice and try to find out what we have to do and how the situation is in the countries of the global south. And therefore, we have the moderator, Sybille Chiari, with us. I'm very happy to introduce her and give the word to her for this talk. Have fun.
Many thanks, Philip, and a warm welcome to everybody out there listening to our discussion today, and a warm welcome to our guests at the podium. So we will use these next 1.5 hours to embark on a journey through a climate just world. We will explore together why we are still way off the track that would lead us there, and we have prepared some questions for you, for the audience as well, as for our guests, that will give enough room for any open questions, I hope, and for raise enough points for discussion. So first of all, I would like to introduce our guests today to you. Well, a warm welcome to Mustafa Cherima. He's joining in from Uganda, and he's the representative of the Save the Sheernut movement that has been initiated in the northwestern part of Uganda. I would like to welcome as well Sabine Von Barrigan. She is representative of the German charity organization Brot für die Welt, Bread for the World, and she is involved in volunteer programs and supporting projects. They also have an education department, and where they issue on the big transformation. Then I would like to introduce Jan Kowalczyk. He is a policy advisor at Oxfam, Germany, and dealing with the climate crisis in many aspects. He's into climate politics and follows the UN negotiations for quite a while, and has to deal with climate financing and the German climate politics, as well as the phase out of coal, so a lot of issue to cover. And then I welcome Mario Dieter. He is a representative of the Green Youth Baden-Württemberg, and he's also a city councillor of the city of Öhringen, as he told me. So with this information, I would like to outline what we're about to do with you today. So we've prepared a short introduction video that has been recorded at the UN climate negotiations in Glasgow, and we will kick off with this. Then we will start right into the discussion with our podium guests, and we have prepared also some Mentee questions for you to interact with us, and we also are open for questions from the audience, so please feel free to contact us and raise questions to our participants as well. So I think we jump right into this introductory video. That's the talk of Mia Mottley. She's the Prime Minister of Barbados, and she gave this very moving talk just a couple of weeks ago in Glasgow.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has taught us that national solutions to global problems do not work. We come to Glasgow with global ambition to save our people and to save our planet, but we now find 3 gaps. On mitigation, climate pledges or NDCs. Without more, we will leave the world on a pathway to 2.7 degrees, and with more, we are still likely to get to 2 degrees. These commitments, made by some, are based on technologies yet to be developed, and this is at best reckless and at worst dangerous. On finance, we are $20 billion short of the 100 billion, and this commitment, even then, might only be met in 2023. On adaptation, adaptation finance remains only at 25%, not the 50-50 split that was promised nor needed given the warming that is already taking place on this earth. Climate finance to frontline small island developing states declined by 25% in 2019. Failure to provide the critical finance and that of loss and damage is measured, my friends, in lives and livelihoods in our communities. This is immoral and it is unjust. If Glasgow is to deliver on the promises of Paris, it must close these three gaps. So I ask to you, what must we say to our people living on the front line in the Caribbean, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Pacific, when both ambition and regrettably some of the needed faces at Glasgow are not present? What excuse should we give for the failure? In the words of that Caribbean icon, Eddie Grant, will they mourn us on the front line? When will we, as world leaders across the world, address the pressing issues that are truly causing our people angst and worry, whether it is climate or whether it is vaccines? Simply put, when will leaders lead? Our people are watching, and our people are taking note. And are we really going to leave Scotland without the resolve and the ambition that is sorely needed to save lives and to save our planet? How many more voices and how many more pictures of people must we see on these screens without being able to move? Or are we so blinded and hardened that we can no longer appreciate the cries of humanity? I have been saying to Barbadians for many years that many hands make light work. Today, we need the correct mix of voices, ambition, and action. Do some leaders in this world believe that they can survive and thrive on their own? Have they not learned from the pandemic? Can there be peace and prosperity if 1/3 of the world literally prospers and the other 2/3 of the world live under siege and face calamitous threats to our well-being? What the world needs now, my friends, is that which is within the ambit of less than 200 persons who are willing and prepared to lead. Leaders must not fail those who elect them to lead. And I say to you, there is a sword that can cut down this Gordian knot, and it has been wielded before. The central banks of the wealthiest countries engaged in $25 trillion of quantitative easing in the last 13 years. 25 trillion. Of that, 9 trillion was in the last 18 months to fight the pandemic. Had we used that 25 trillion to purchase bonds, to finance the energy transition, or the transition of how we eat, or how we move ourselves in transport, we would now today be reaching that 1.5 degrees limit that is so vital to us. I say to you today in Glasgow that an annual increase in the SDRs of $500 billion a year for 20 years, put in a trust to finance the transition, is the real gap, Secretary General, that we need to close, not the 50 billion being proposed for adaptation. And if 500 billion sounds big to you, guess what? It is just 2% of the 25 trillion. This is the sword we need to wield. Our excitement 1 hour into this event is far less than it was 6 months ago leading up to this event. Can we, with those voices and these speeches from Sir David and others, find it within ourselves to get the resolve to bring Glasgow back on track? Or do we leave today believing that it was a failure before it starts? Our world, my friends, stands at a fork in the road. One no less significant than when the United Nations was formed in 1945. But then, the majority of our countries here did not exist. We exist now. The difference is we want to exist 100 years from now. And if our existence is to mean anything, then we must act in the interests of all of our people who are dependent on us. And if we don't, we will allow the path of greed and selfishness to sow the seeds of our common destruction. The leaders of today, not 2030, not 2050, must make this choice. It is in our hands, and our people and our planet need it more than ever. We can work with who is ready to go, because the train is ready to leave. And those who are not yet ready, we need to continue to ring circle and to remind them that their people, not our people, but their citizens, need them to get on board as soon as possible. Code red to the G7 countries. Code red to the G20. Earth to COP, that's what it said. Earth to COP. For those who have eyes to see, for those who have ears to listen, and for those who have a heart to feel, 1.5 is what we need to survive. 2 degrees, yes, SG, is a death sentence for the people of Antigua and Barbuda, for the people of the Maldives, for the people of Dominica and Fiji, for the people of Kenya and Mozambique, and yes, for the people of Samoa and Barbados. We do not want that dreaded death sentence. And we've come here today to say, try harder, because our people, the climate army, the world, the planet, needs our actions now, not next year, not in the next decade. Thank you.
So we let this sink and start with the first round of questions to our podium guests. While most people by now perceive the climate crisis as a serious threat, hardly anyone is really aware of these huge injustices and the imbalance that's attached to it. So those who contributed least costs to the crisis and suffer the most and the earliest from the consequences. So there's sort of a blind spot around these justice issues. I would like to start with you, Mustafa Chirima. What do you think? Why is it so hard to understand these justice issues around the world? Could you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you once again. And I think as I was watching this video, I almost melted down because she has said it. Before the jobs started, I already concluded and evaluated it. And yes, as per my perspective, what yesterday, that means we had acted yesterday backwards, because if I can connect this discussion right now with the agenda I drive, the shared nut species, as I talk now, it is a situation where the rich still drive the deforestation of this, and they come and greenwash other people here, or lipstick, or if I could use that little term, that yes, oh yes, we are going on protecting the species, or want this. Even there are papers written. For example, the Minister of Environment in Uganda wrote a ministerial directive directing the local governments not to, cut the shea nut tree. And these are issues that remain only in the official shelves, I mean, in their cabinets, whatever you call. But when you come right on the ground, it is completely a shocking story. As I told you, I am on the ground trying to like do head counting, if you would call it, a head counting of the trees. But every time, today I am here, the next day I move to the next location. When I come back to this tree is already gone. So just like the Prime Minister had just said, there's a total, what I will call, I don't know what to say, double standards or what, but I think that word doesn't fit well. I mean, that kind of politics in the climate issue. Somebody talks this and acts that. So these are the situations that are trying to disturb us. I think if I were to vote somebody for this year, this honorable member, the Prime Minister, will be my vote. Honestly, she has spoken everything, and this is exactly what I am. Remember, I was supposed to be at the COP, but because I missed going there, so many media houses, both national and international, are being calling on me, and they're doing those interviews. And my key word was, COP is just a talking shop. That's how I describe it, a talking shop, where we meet maybe in a bar or in a chat, or people just chat. There's nothing like that. But the main issue is we had better done something today. That's why for me, I have decided now to go down, because my organization is called Saving the Share Species. So how can I save it? By trying to raise, some seedlings and tend to distribute the communities, those who are willing to, plant it. So this is what we call by action. It's not just words. You remember, I always do my advocacy by walking. So I still translate that. You walk the talk. That don't just talk. So you need to walk the talk. So I am really impressed by, yes. I'm impressed by, yes, go ahead, yes.
So that's a very, very strong claim for action, boots on the ground, and walk the talk rather than talk with no ends and dead ends.
Yes, that is.
Thank you very much for this first statement.
I'm sorry, I have some flu and my voice was not coming well, but I think you need to bear with me. My voice is not coming well.
That's fine.
I just have some
fine.
strong
Thank
flu.
you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's fine. So let's give the question to Sabine Von Barrigan. What do you think about where do you spot the reason for this blindness on the justice issue of so many people representing their countries, for example, at the negotiations?
Well, I think the problem is that our politicians have one first goal, and that first goal is to be voted again and again and again, and that is why they are talking about this issue not openly. They have to find some strategies to survive, to stay in their I don't know, honorable position or whatsoever, and that is why they are not true to us all, and that is why it needs the civil society to push these other items and bring in these subjects and stay at the side of the people in all over the world who need support. And we are just turning around our own issues, and you see it in this pandemic that we are already getting boosters, and while 2/3 of the world are not vaccinated yet at all, and that is the difficulty, that we are talking about justice, but we do not want to share.
So
this is the short version.
The very short version. Yes. Is there anything you want to add from that, from your perspective, Mario, as Sabine Von Barrigan has touched upon politics, and you're one being engaged and active in this field. What's your perspective?
Yeah, she mentioned the inconvenient truths. I think that people in power don't want to share them because, as you have mentioned, they only act to get reelected. And so if the common society gets to hear those inconvenient truths, they think about the outputs on their own lives. As a kid from a small town, the people more think about the future of the car, for example, than the futures of all those people in the global south. And yeah, that's a really huge problem. And as an activist, it's also hard to get people on the streets with problems that are far away. So we've seen that in the summer there occurred huge climate problems in Germany, and we could talk about that and got more people on the streets because it's not that far away. And when those things occur here, the people more think about that. Oh, that could happen to me, so I maybe have to act. But it's the climate crisis too urgent to don't tell the truth about the people in the global south. So we have to get that done, and also get the people to acknowledge those truths.
Thank you, Mario. Jan Kowalczyk, would you like to add to this point from your perspective about where you spot the real roots of injustice, or has been anything said by your by this?
Yeah, I mean, much has been said. I would also start with the politicians and their lack of interest to act in the common good, and rather focus on, it's not that they focus entirely, I mean, exclusively on getting re-elected, but it's very important to them. So they won't move until they understand society once more, or wants things to be different. Once society tells them that, they change. But they don't change because they understand what's good for people and the planet. That it's not how it works, or that's at least my experience in Germany, in the German political system. And in some cases, there are, of course, honest and ambitious politicians. These are not the ones really in power, of course, but they exist. And there may be one or two or three politicians with a lot of power who also want the right thing, but they just don't get it. They don't understand what the climate crisis is going to be for us. They don't want to understand it because understanding it would require them to change course dramatically. We all know this. I don't need to go into details of this. But I sometimes have the feelings these people aren't evil. They're not evil. They're not only egoistic. They may want the right things, but they don't understand it. They don't talk to the people who are impacted by the climate crisis, for instance. I mean, hardly. Maybe they go to Western Germany to see where the floodings occurred earlier this year, and they talk to the people and learn maybe a little bit, but they don't go to, say, to the small island states and understands how lack of action is, as the minister said it in Glasgow, counted in lives and livelihoods. And this is also our jobs, also what we as Oxfam are trying to bring these voices of the Global South to politicians in Germany. It's a very hard sell, because facing these realities gets to a point where the politicians have to admit to themselves, we're not doing what we claim to be doing. We are not acting responsibly we're not doing enough. We don't want to confront society with what is needed to avert the climate crisis. They think, okay, the real dangerous or dramatic impacts for Germany are still far away. They're not that far away, but they think they are far away. We don't need to bother about this now. We can wait for technological solutions. We can sit it out. We can just carry on business as usual, doing a little bit here, a little bit there, but essentially let the situation unroll and unfold itself. And this is, of course, a dangerous track we are on. But I can see this all around. When you speak even to the ambitious politicians, you think like, look, you just don't get it. It's not a little bit here, a little bit there. It's dramatic change in course.
A huge lack of imagination, what's expecting us. And also the gap of information, maybe, or experience on this side of the story. So my question would be, if you have any suggestions or ideas for stories that maybe you want to share that might help to really better understand or even internalize, so really digest the relation of how the climate crisis is affecting people and justice issues. Would you want to share a good example that's really maybe that you experienced or that you're aware of that might help or that illustrates very well why we can't look away any longer? So I would like to start with Mustafa Cerima, if you're okay to talk on that, if there's an example for you that you think would be really helpful, a good short story that might be a useful story to share with politicians as well.
Yes, I think you remember I even wrote to these people at the COP, and I think I shared it through X6 Rebellion and so many other platforms. I remember BBC interviewed me. It was a rather comprehensive letter I wrote to them, right from my own region up to the national level and now international level. But I think from the previous, because I from the German side here, it's more or less the same. So I don't know, and I don't know if it is really that kind of thing. But I think the only one word also I could say is we really don't need to wait for the politicians to determine our future and to determine our destiny, because the world now knows somebody like me. I'm a former school teacher, and I have not retired per se, but I just decided to walk out of the classroom to go and broadcast the message, because the warning signs they're just on the wall, and politicians are not bothered. Honestly, the warning signs are on the wall. Let me give you this example. I am from Uganda, and in Uganda we know of the Rwenzori Mountains, and the world over. Even in the Western world, used to know that Rwenzori Mountains got its name, the mountains of the moon, because of the perpetual snows, the snows that were ever there on the mountain. That was how the Rwenzori Mountains got its name. And that's where I started my advocacy. But today, you see, the snows are receding, they are melting at an alarming speed. So once the snow melts on the mountains up there, it comes down as water, and because the water is too much, it causes floods on the lower levels. Just recently, this year, one of the most strong hospitals was completely swept by the floods, and these are floods that come right from the top of the mountain. The point here is now the global temperature is so high, and so the snows are now melting, and I'm afraid if this one continues, and it's going to continue, if we are going by the actions of the politicians, like from the COP, just our recent COP. So Rwenzori is going to continue heating, and the heat is going to melt this snow down, displacing people, floods, and the end result is a total food insecurity for our people here. So these are things that will rather now need a concerted effort, much as the politicians are trying to fail us. But I think today we are around 6 or 7 here. If we can all broadcast this message, the key word is let's try to do our best. Do whatever you can at your own level. For me, I got afraid of the extinction of this species. I said, let me go out and save the species. And I didn't want to wait for the government or any other person to do that. I could go in the bush, collect the fruits, and raise the seedlings for this thing. And these seedlings, I'm going to distribute them free of charge to schools and other educational institutions. And right now, one of the higher institutions has again agreed to work with me. So I think the best thing is for us to act in our own capacities. Let's just try. Maybe tomorrow somebody is saying, oh, Mustafa is also doing this. Let me also try like that. And that's why I decided to leave my gainful employment and do this, because I know my children tomorrow are going to benefit from this. By the way, for your information, I was just sharing with Mario. I've added another generation onto my home yesterday. I have a newborn baby. So these are things which the youth in the next generation see.
Mustafa, we can't really hear you anymore very well.
So I'm just trying to set, today we call it a relation of the willing. You see, you had Germany and West Germans. Okay.
So thank you for this inspiring example as well. So maybe Mario, you want to respond to that. Has there been anything that where you had this moment or this story that really made you understand and you might want to share when?
I mean, I watch many documentaries, but I'm a privileged person, and all my friends are privileged too. So we need examples like Mr. Gerima, who tell us what they've experienced and how we personally as privileged people have to change. So that's extremely important. And I think through social media we have so many possibilities to get these examples and stories to all people. And yeah, it's really important. And also people like me who have like 500 followers on Instagram
Yes.
are telling to those small systems of friends and people who interact with me that stories like those exist. And yeah, I'm sad that I don't get these experiences to tell them exactly, but I mean I'm as well very lucky to don't have those experiences, and we have to talk about those issues that people from the global north don't have the same experiences as the people from the global south. I mean, that's true and clear.
So, Mr. Kowalczyk, do you think it's also part of your work to be a person facilitating between these stories and those who should hear these stories? And is there anything you want to share in this context?
Yeah, that's a bit, I said it earlier, this is kind of our role, what we are doing. I mean, I think Sabine can also say the same about Bread for the World. So many organizations in Germany working with partners in the Global South will do that. They bring the stories from their to politicians here or to the public in Germany and to politicians. This is a critical ingredient of the storytelling. We need to explain to the German society and to politicians and the media and everyone in Germany how actions or inactions in Germany are impacting the world. And this is one additional argument we need. It doesn't cut the cake. This doesn't mean once you do that, we are fine, because politicians have other motivations than solving injustices in the world. Frankly, many of them, I mean, personally, they do care about Germany destroying livelihoods in other countries, personally, but as a politician, they might not, because they would say, yeah, it's a big problem. We're trying as hard as we can to cut our emissions, but as hard as we can is very subjective. And they say, yeah, we need to do this slowly and gradually and not as quick as would be needed from a scientific perspective or a justice perspective. They just have a different measurement of a different framework, how they measure things. So we need to explain to them what they decide or don't do or do impacts people elsewhere, but we also need to bring all the other good arguments we have for cutting emissions. So let's say independent of fossil fuel imports, for instance, air pollution is one thing, and all the other arguments we have. Only the combined arguments can get us any further. But still, that will not be enough. I mean, the politicians, if they wanted to, they would have all the information at their fingertips, all the stories. They can also watch documentaries. They can also be briefed about this. They probably are briefed about this all the time, what climate change means for people in other parts of the world. Yet they still don't act. So this means just good arguments, good stories isn't going to bed. We need to work on the movement in Germany, the great movement of Fridays for Future, for instance, plus all other aspects of German civil society that goes out and says, look, this is just not good enough. We want more from you. Otherwise, we will vote you out of power. Of course, well, the last elections we're getting a new government. Maybe it's marginally better. Let's see how the coalition talks go. I'm hesitant that at least two of the three parties currently negotiating the new government treaty are ready to betray everything Glasgow might have achieved just to serve the interests of their peer group. So that isn't changed by telling them yet more stories. It's going to change by building a movement in Germany that really demands this action, strengthening Fridays for Future and other parts of the movement. I mean, you can name them, and really this has to come from German society, not from people in the global south speaking about the impacts or telling the stories about the impacts. That's not, for me, this would be more than enough. And for many of us, probably for all of these people here in this talk now and everyone watching it, but it's not enough for the politicians we have. And that's why it is so important that we build the power of our movement here in Germany.
Thank you, Sabine. You have maybe similar experiences to share. Would you want to add something to what Jan Kowalczyk said?
Yes, I would like to add another aspect. After having blamed our politicians, I would like also some kind of accuse our people, the electors. For instance, when you have a look into the Ahrtal, the valley where the river Ahr brought this terrible flood this summer, there had a party the best results after the election, who is almost not at all involved in climate change, in saving the climate. So we ourselves are part of the problem, and we are also our people like to vote somebody who promises them, I don't know, better conditions for whatsoever, getting more welfare, getting more this and that, and we are the ones to elect our parties. And it is a saying in Germany that every people has the government it earns. So these are two sides of the coin. you know, the politicians on the one side and the electors on the other. So I sometimes think, yes, we do not know enough about all these belongings together, and we kind of have a structural problem of having the right information. For instance, this is all not these problems started, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, when our developers, as we call them, entered a ship and sailed over the oceans and found lands, and they entered it and they robbed it out, and I don't know, I don't need to tell you the story, I think you know them all. And we do not, it is a structural problem that we in our schools do not learn enough or almost anything about colonial history, and how this caused this wheel which began to turn and to turn and to turn, starting in the golden triangle and turning faster and faster and faster and faster, and bringing us into the situation where we are today.
So thank you for sharing. We have also prepared a question when we come now to a point more specifically dealing with climate justice, and as the memories of the COP in Glasgow are still very fresh, I guess also for you, I would like to start now a short interaction with our audience through this Mentee survey. So what we will do is that Fabian will be posting a link where you can access the question and take part in this small survey using your mobile phone or laptop or any device where you can access the internet. So the question that we would have prepared for you is regarding COP26 in Glasgow. If you would look at it in the history of climate justice, this COP26, what was it to you? We have a scale. It was an important milestone, or on the other end, it was rather disappointing. So we would like to hear your opinion about that. You have the opportunity to fill in this question right now. And as soon as we have the results, Fabian will share our screen with you. Okay, it seems like it's already very stabilized at a level of high disappointment rather. So 1/3 says, yes, it was an important milestone. There's some signals that were perceived maybe as hopeful by the audience. The other, now 3/4 agree in it was sort of a disappointment. So thank you for this estimate, for you sharing your opinion and your, it keeps dropping. Okay. So as you said also, Mustafa, who announced talks as being just talks, like people talking everywhere, Greta Thunberg and her blah, blah, blah rhetorics. I would like to ask you, Jan Kowalczyk, if looking at these post-Glasgow commitments, and we all know they are way too little what we need to have, so they will still lead to a 2.4 degree world, maybe higher. A lot of homework's left. How do you interpret the signals that have been sent out regarding climate justice issues, or even more specifically climate financing?
Climate justice is not only about finance, of course. I mean, we discussed this already. So I'd like to start a little bit with the issue that got, I think, most attention in the media of Glasgow, of the results of Glasgow, which is how to deal with the totally inadequate climate reduction targets of all countries when you combine them. It's interesting. I mean, it was this disappointment. It achieved much less than was needed. What it did, however, it did recognize the big gap between the targets set out by the Paris Agreement and what the combined impact of countries' mitigation ambition is. And it urges all countries to change or to improve on their targets until next year. And it's only urging them, it's not committing them. I mean, countries don't say, yes, we are going to do that, but the conference urges all to do that. And this is possibly the best thing you can get out of such a conference, sad as that is. And this now has to go back to capitals, and we need to talk to the governments of the world, including Germany, the incoming government, saying, look, Glasgow recognized you're not doing enough. Glasgow urges you to do more. What are you going to do until next year? What are you going to prepare for next year? And I think the risk is that, of course, even the new government will not live up to this job. I have more hopes than with the previous government, of course, but well, I don't want to judge the outcome of the coalition talks, but I mean, this is a challenge now. And Glasgow's success will be measured by what countries come back with next year in terms of changed mitigation targets. So that's the one thing. On finance, there was a slight step forward. It said we will double adaptation finance for developing countries. And this is a step forward. It's nowhere near enough. I mean, that needs to be understood. It's a tiny step forward. And we have to work with that now. I mean, it is an increase. It's not going to be enough. So we have to come back on this issue again and again. The biggest disappointment on climate justice of this conference was that the developed countries, the rich countries who are with a huge responsibility for causing the crisis, they refused to accept a proposal by all developing countries combined to set up a facility or a mechanism that will provide financial assistance to deal with destruction and losses and damages that are unavoidable, even in the best cases when we cut emissions far, when we adapt to the changing climate. Even then you will have damages and destruction, lost lives and livelihoods, economic damages, and dealing with those is an issue of developing countries. They represent the majority of the population on this earth, yet rich countries have refused to set up this facility or begin development of a facility that at some point in the future would provide this assistance to deal and recover from destruction and damages due to climate change. So this is the big gap that Glasgow leaves. And this will come back again and again because the impacts are getting worse. At some points, rich countries will no longer be able to oppose it, but in Glasgow, they did that. The EU was one of the biggest blockers here, or the most powerful blockers, together with the United States. So this is not a moment where the European Union can say, we did as much as we could, or we contributed to the success. No, the European Union blocked this important step forward dealing with losses and damages of the climate crisis.
Thank you. So, Sabine Von Barrigan, would you want to share your perception and impressions of what is left from Glasgow?
I think I completely share the point of view of Jan, and I cannot add a lot. Just to explain from the perspective of the poorer countries or the so-called global South, of course, it is not enough, and as you said, it can never be enough. And but it was probably the best to be reached in this context of a big worldwide conference. And I think it is pretty hard to discuss those items with so many persons and so many countries and so many different interests to be put together. And well, I'm not pretty sure how to decide if it was a disappointment or not. I've also read analyses that say that it was the best what could be reached in this context. Perhaps we should not refer to those COPs so much, and better do what we can do in our small world. And but it is only one part of the puzzle. Yeah. And yes. I think that's all.
Okay. So anything you want to add to this, Mario or Mustafa Cerima?
You want to go first, Mr. Gerima?
You are muted. Maybe you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I was saying Mario should go ahead, then I follow.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, I completely agree with Mrs. Von Barrigan, excuse me. And yeah, I'm not disappointed, but I don't have many feelings about the COP. I mean, yeah, it's a conference and they discuss things, but the outcome is, as always, yeah, rather disappointing. But that was a feeling that I thought about before the conference. So, for example, at the COP15 in 2009, they discussed the 100 billion climate financing, and when we look at on that today, we didn't achieve that target in the real life scenario. We have like 600 billion of financing in fossil fuels in addition. So we can see that those outcomes of these conferences are yeah, talk, blah blah blah, but in real life they don't get in real legislation, and there are often more problems than before because we don't our politics and have so many screws to I don't know the verb, to turn, yeah. Thanks. And when I'm talking about hope, I'm not that hopeful anymore. When I look at the Ampel coalition in Germany, and think about the coalition paper that reaches the public on Thursday, I think. Yeah, it's sad, and as a young man, it's hard to see the truth that even as a member of the party, they ended up in a coalition with the FDP and the SPD, and those two parties say, okay, everything in climate action has to be dealt with by the Greens, and that doesn't work. This is the status quo, and we have to think about these things happening in Germany, happening in the EU. I mean, the EU can't pass things. The parliament has two less rights. They can't make initiative reforms because they don't have the right to do that. And we also have to get a vote by all countries in the EU. And that's with that in mind, you can look at Poland or other countries in the EU that they don't want to change politics about climate change. And I mean, when I look 30 or 40 years in the future, what will be? And I'm not that hopeful. So maybe as the voters, we can get in for a better coalition in 4 years, or in 8, or in 12, but the time will pass, and we will not be able to pass legislation that will get the temperature rise under 1.5 degrees. Maybe we will get 2 degrees in the end, but I don't think that it will be that good.
So what is there to do if politics fail or postpones or just disappoints the ambition we would all like to see? Mustafa Cerima, what do you think, if it's up to us then to build the cornerstones of a truly climate just future, if we can't rely on and cannot wait for any more ambition to come on this high level of politics? What are the cornerstones? Where do you spot leverage points that are at hand at our capacities that we could all start using?
Yeah, thank you. I think the corner points are immense, but of course, am I clear? You hear me? Okay. Yeah, what I would just say is, like my colleague just said, Jan said, he said a very good word, which I just noted down. We have urging and committing. COP started in COP1, and today this is COP26. That means 26 sittings have been there. And one would wonder what is being the outcome of this. And we are told by scientists that the time is now. The time is now. So to me, let's just find space in our hearts and then we begin doing the actual work, commitment. It's just commitment. It's not even be these financial commitments. I mean, full body commitment. Let's just get on the ground. Let's say if we have a lot of plastics trying to pollute one of your cities, it's not just saying, let's do this, let's do this. Why don't you just organize a group, maybe 2 women, 3 women, then the rest will follow suit. And let's collect the plastics and, make use of them or dispose them properly. That's 1. 2, we know that we are always being fed up by these politicians with their cooked food, which food actually in our stomach is not good. So why should we still continue waiting for their food, which is not healthy for us? So the only thing here is like my own thinking, because my people were blaming me. Why did he go out of employment? Now you have looked like a strict person. But I said, I think I'm happy at heart than when I was in the classroom. I still call myself a teacher, but just a teacher in the open air. And indeed, I have been availed so many platforms, like on the TV, I've done my awareness drives on radios, on newspapers, any media platform, I have done it. Even at weddings and the funerals, I am usually given chances to talk. So the whole thing here is, let's just commit ourselves to see that at least there's a saying in English that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a stride. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a stride. So if somebody like maybe Mustafa, like Isabella, can also do whatever they can do within their reach, then others will need to see this. At the end of it all, these politicians will even feel shameful because they have been mandated to do the needful, but instead they are turning it around and not doing it. And it really pains me. And for me here, I usually even sometimes get into heated debates with them. For us, I just had a heated debate with the State Minister of Environment here. Good enough, she is on my platform. I have a WhatsApp platform for Save the Share. even the ministers on the platform, the United Nations environment people on the platform, but I am the chief architect of that platform. So it is a think tank where people share ideas freely, whether you're a minister or whether you're what, at whatever caliber you are. But we just want to have a common ground where we can all begin from. So I think it's not the right time for us now to continue lamenting, and it's not the time to continue urging. Here's Yana said, the two words, urging has never worked. So let's get down, commit ourselves to this, and we do. And I must be happy that a group of rebels, Extinction Rebels, that's how we call ourselves, from UK, just organized themselves. They decided to make for me a small website because I couldn't afford it here. It is just a mini one, I think 4-page or something like that. Right now, if you click SaveTheShareTree.org, you go to the website and you will see activities there. My own people here do that. And yeah, that is the best they could do at their own level. And tomorrow, another person is going to do this. Recently, somebody donated to buy 100 seedlings. And these are the things we need. Because for me, my net is the seedling. And, you know, I'm to raise 7 million seedlings within a period of 10 years. And I have started the journey. And right now, I have 4,000 seedlings in my bed, single-handedly. That means by next year, we'll have to hit something like 10,000. Yes, we can arrive at the 7 million seedlings. So this is what we need now, and not the blah, blah kind of thing. And actually, yes, I still have 10 years to go for gainful employment, but I've decided that are not good for me, because when I get salary, it only helps my family and some people. But when I talk about the climate, it's, as Jan said, it is a common good, and the whole global community will also benefit. Remember, the shea products are consumed in the Western world more than even at our place here. For us, we only remain talking about the tree because we have a cultural attachment to it. We identify ourselves with it, but the value-added products are very many in Germany. Actually, Germany is the main market for the shea product. For information, in Uganda here, we have a German national I work with. He goes to the villages to do that, and he's very good in trying to teach people about that. So between Uganda and Germany, we already have that kind of cordial relationship, and that is a message to the rest of the world that they should emulate Germany to do this. Thank you.
So we need many, many more of these partnerships, many more of these thriving collaborations that are built by people, built by initiatives, connecting initiatives, and I think there are many good examples for this as well. I would like to ask Mr. Kowalczyk, do you, when looking at these bigger pictures of on which cornerstones a climate just future is built, is there anything that's lacking in the public debate? As you mentioned before, climate financing is not everything, and seems like you missed something.
There's a lot of things missing. If they were all in place, we would be, the situation would be quite different, I think. We have, all of the ingredients are there. So we have a discussion. There's ample discussions and good arguments saying, okay, we've got the technology, we've got the economic power here in Germany and many other countries to do the transition we need to do, and do it as fast as we need to do. So this is missing. The knowledge is there, the technology is there, the economic wealth is there. So that's not the problem. We know about, science tells us in ever clearer details and with ever growing confidence how the climate crisis is going to unfold, what it will cause in disruption in our societies, in Germany, but also in other, more so already today in other countries. We know that. We're hearing a lot of stories of what's happening under the climate crisis in other parts of the world. We're seeing the impacts here in Germany. So my sense is, I'm struggling myself. We have all the information, we have it there. we don't get it out there, and that's maybe a bigger problem than actually getting the stories together. If you look into the media has reported daily on Glasgow, but now Glasgow is over. So all of a sudden it's gone. The crisis isn't gone. The seriousness that we are, or the situation we are facing has not improved. Yet it's no longer in the news. And that of course means lots of people, voters, will turn the other way and look about other things, about their personal lives, about the corona pandemic, of course. That is now again, dominating the media, and I can understand that it is a life crisis here in Germany. But the climate crisis, that is maybe less of a disaster in Germany at the moment, but already a disaster in other countries, is of course no longer in the media. So this is a problem that the media doesn't transport. The media also tries to sell stories. So they look at what is the audience, what do they want to know, what do they want to read about, what do they want to hear. It's not only what they say, what is important for today and the future of our societies. So they also try to sell it, and that means, of course, there's less attention. And then that is good for politicians, because that for them it means, if the media talks about corona, all we need to do is talk about corona. We don't need to talk about the other big crisis we are facing, because the media is reporting on it. So the public is not alerted to it in some way or another. So it's a bit of a vicious circle. The media, again, is not evil as such. The politicians are not evil as such, but they're all playing the game of advancing their own interests, them staying in power, them remaining influential, and doing what they think the voters will want them to do at this point in time. And I'm struggling myself. What is it that we can get or that we can do to improve it, to keep the crisis high on the agenda at all times of all politicians from now into the future? It's more of us needing to speak to our friends. It's more of us speaking to politicians about it. It's more of what we are already doing. But it's not just more, we also probably need to do it slightly differently. We need to, I don't know, maybe we need to speak to politicians very differently, not to them, but to their friends and to their peers. So that these peers and friends speak to the politicians, that they get the feeling, oh, it's not only these activists on the streets that are concerned, they're not going to vote for my party anyway, but it's my friends, it's the people around me, it's my husband, it's my wife, it's my children. They asking me, why am I not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? That would be a bit of an undercover strategy, where you would try to sneak in these messages to make sure that the peer group around a politician is what talks about climate crisis way more. There has been, I remember, I'm saying this because I remember reading an article about a sociological study of the German Bundestag, the German parliament, that essentially revealed that parliamentarians are more likely to enact legislation, for instance, that is in the interest of the peers of the politicians. Now, the peers of the politicians are not the people who are suffering from the climate crisis. The peers around politicians are businessmen, lobby front groups, other politicians, people that are already rich and wealthy, or at least well off. So these are the ones that legislation is being made. And this is natural because politicians are only human beings. So of course they listen to their peers, to their friends and colleagues and their direct environment, rather than to facts, scientists, stories we can bring to them on the impact of the climate crisis and so forth. So we need to get this more to what matters to the politicians. And yeah, I don't have a perfect answer what to do exactly, but it has to do with grabbing them differently than we've done before.
So finding their sweet spot that hasn't been discovered yet. Thanks for all these insights, and I would really like to open the floor now for questions that we received from the audience already, and I would invite the audience also to raise further questions using Mentee. So please go to the Mentee link and use it also to type in your questions to our guests. We've received a question, maybe someone of you wants to start with that. The question is, what is the biggest chance we have to get a turnaround? Anyone want to? anyone wanting to answer this? Yes, please, Sabine Von Barrigan.
Well, I try to begin. I do not have the perfect answer to this, but I think we have to kind of change our attitude, to kind of change our view to the world. We have to say farewell to all these things around us. We believe we are needing. We are not needing them, and what we really need are other people, other human beings, and we have to. This is a learning from the corona pandemic. What we really need is to be in relation to others, to meet, to talk, to, I don't know, to play together, to drink together, to party, whatsoever, to talk, to inspire each other. And maybe that is, we should concentrate on what is the advantage of lower down our standards, because I think it might make us free.
The beauty of downscaling, the beauty of leaving the status of an overdeveloped country.
Yes, and we have not spoken about the degrowth movement in this discussion, and which is I want to stress it. It is a discussion in the global north for the global north. To make that very clear, and I think we should look more at that in that corner.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Kowalczyk.
Yeah, just because Sabine said talk to each other or talk to others, and this reminded me. Yeah, I mean, and Mario said in the coalition talks, it's the Greens that have to fight for everything climate, and all the other two parties just sit there and throw their particular pet issues into the negotiating box. And that's bizarre, because climate is not in the interest of the Greens alone. It's in the interest of even the FDP. I mean, they probably can't imagine it, but it's even in their interest, and dealing with the climate crisis in the long run. And so I was wondering, maybe indeed one thing to do is to talk more to the other side. I mean, I would argue most of the AfD voters voting for a party that even says climate change doesn't exist or something. I would say most of the AfD voters, they do care about justice and equity, in the sense, if you speak to them directly and ask them, look, is it okay that your way of life is destroying lives and livelihoods in other countries? They would probably say, well, actually, no, I'd rather not have that situation. If I could, yeah, maybe I don't want this. But they think climate action is something of the Green Party, and that's these left people. These are the enemies of myself, because they want all the things my party doesn't want, or the AfD says I don't want, or I feel insecure about this because it means I need to change and I'm uncomfortable with change, all these things. And if we find ways to talk to other parts of society about the climate crisis without confronting them about what they are doing or what happens when they vote for this or that party, but trying to connect to these people, explaining them without prejudging them, without judging about them, just like being open, trying to understand the issues. Why do they see, let's say, the Green Party as enemies, or why do they think Fridays for Futures are only activists that they hate or something? Why is that so? So what's making them feel that way, and what is it where they probably have common ground with some of us when it comes to not wanting to destroy others' livelihoods? No one wants that. I mean, very few people, I would guess. But how can we win them over by explaining them, look, this is not about you in your ditch, I in my ditch. It's all of us together, and we need to find a way that helps that works for all of us, and not, of course, not only those that can afford to change jobs and change things because they have so much income and wealth, they don't care so much, but those people who feel if this changes, if we phase out coal power, I will lose my job, and I don't want to lose my job. Everyone can understand that no one wants to lose their job. So there's a serious concern on their side, and if you don't take it seriously and talk to them about this, you will not win them over. So not only do we need to offer them a fair transition out of this, but we also need to get their hearts convinced by it and explain them, okay, this is what we really all together should be wanting, and do it in a way that it's eye to eye. It's not, I'm telling you what's right and you have to learn. It's not that doesn't work, of course, but it's going to them in a dialogue situation, find a solution for the crisis, essentially together. Sounds a bit strange to say that, but I think the more I see this polarization we have in society, the more I think these dialogues are.
There's also another question leading to the where you already answered some of it, I think, right now with your answer. It was a question to you if you want to share your expectations for the new regarding climate justice and how it is dealt with, how it will be dealt with by the new government. Are there any expectations besides that you want to share? Mario, you already said your hope is rather low than high regarding climate and climate justice as well, or?
I think we have to do things that people aren't afraid of. We have to show them that they don't lose their cars when we do climate action. And I think as a member of the Greens, my party is able to do that. And yeah, the Ampel coalition is a rather not that great coalition, but it also has many different movements of people in those parties. So we can get many people on our sides and show them what good climate action could be. And I'm often thinking about the elections in 4 years. So maybe in 4 years there are other there could be other coalitions, and maybe the Greens have more than 20%, not 14.8. And if that would be like that, I think the position of fighting with the other parties in a coalition is completely different. And now, when I'm thinking about Robert Habeck, for example, maybe he will lead the economics. He will be the person who is who makes the politics in the economics and as well the climate things. So I really like this guy, and when you talk to him, he's a smart guy and can get things done. And I think to get things done is the really important the really important thing, even when it's not the hope that drives me forward to go on the streets, but when I see small actions can lead to big actions in 4 or 8 years, that is my hope, that we can live with that and get an outcome in 30 years, as I've mentioned before, that is okay. And when it's okay, I think that is the only thing to live with, or if you understand me. I think we can live with that, but things will not be good in the end. So we have to cope with that.
So coping with a situation that's not the one you hope for in the next years. Anyone else who gives another prospect to what's ahead of us in terms of climate justice? Briefly, before we open up the next and last.
Yeah. Yes. I just wanted to make some points on these two words. There is the climate crisis and climate change. Actually, right now, focus is on climate crisis, and that's where the politicians are majorly blamed. But there's this part of the climate change, the root causes of the climate change, where the irresponsible behaviors of the common people. That's something we also need to address, especially for me, who does advocacy in the community. You see, like the plastic pollution. Yes, we use these plastics for containing what we need to consume. But today, the whole blame is on Pepsi Cola, is it Coca-Cola, that kind of stuff. Yes, they produce a lot of immense number of these bottles. But if we had a better way of disposing them, it wouldn't have been that. So there are these issues of climate change. For us here, again, climate change is not just brought by politicians. It is in one way contributed by the common ordinary person. Someone that goes from nowhere and cuts the trees down. We all know that the tree is a very big factor in the climate issue. The tree, somebody just cuts the tree down and doesn't consider it. And here we cannot blame the politician. Maybe we'll blame the politician for not, urging these people not to cut it. Because some politicians will say, if I tell this person is my voter, so I will lose my votes next time. But the main issue is we are also some as ordinary people to blame. So the two key issues now emerging right now: the climate crisis. It is reached a crisis level, but before that, we were to consider the climate change. What has caused this climate change? So these are the issues we need to look into concurrently. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. So I would like to invite the audience to jump into our last question for you, because we heard a lot about who will maybe not lead on climate justice in the future years, but we would also want to hear from you who will be the leaders, who will lead the fight for climate justice. What's your opinion? Please fill in the Mentee on that. And maybe there's something appearing, a person, an organization, maybe it's you yourself. Just type in whatever you feel like to answer this question. We will share it in the end. And I would like to invite the podium guests to have sort of a last sentence to share with you on this issue. We couldn't touch upon any of the all of the questions, but I think we touched upon many issues. So please, if there's anything that you would want to leave our audience with as a last statement that you want to stick with them, use the opportunity now. And I want to start with Sabine Von Barrigan, if you want to choose this final statement from your side.
Yes. First, I want to refer to the last words of Mustafa, if I'm allowed to. I think it is, of course, it is the people are not to blame to cut the trees, because they cut it for they need it. And I think we have to change kind of structures. We have to give them the structures that they can lead their life without cutting trees. I don't have any idea how it can be realized in Uganda. I can have an idea how something like this or something similar like this can be realized here in my country. But the statement at the end I want to share is perhaps we shall, as I said before, concerning attitude, perhaps we should not deal after the idea of Monsieur Descartes. I think, therefore I am, and go away from our individualism and go more to this wonderful approach from Africa called Ubuntu. I am because you are, and you are because I am. And we belong together somehow, and we are connected. If we know it or not, we are. And well, this is what I would share at the end.
Thank you very much, Sabine Von Barrigan. May I give the word now to Jan Kowalczyk for your final statement, please?
I mean, much has been said already. Maybe three things that I consider important for all of us for the future now, for the next thing is maybe one thing, let's say three things for now. First is find things to do, like the things that Mustafa is doing with the trees. I think this is really valuable it's not only valuable on the ground, it really makes an impact and a difference, but it also keeps yourself intact if you do things on the ground rather than only the theoretical talking a lot and so forth, but doing real things on the ground is something that I think we all need to do more. And in the case of what Mustafa does, I mean, it really has a positive impact on the environment around Mustafa. So I like the work, Mustafa, you're doing. It's really great. I spent some of the time browsing about it on the internet to find out more first, because I didn't know you before. So I thought, wow, this is really cool. That's really great stuff. We all need to be doing more of that. Second, as I said already before, we need to speak to people. We need to speak to our adversaries, the people on the other side, or that we think are on the other side, or the people who think that we are on the other side. Speak to them without prejudging. And this, I know this is really difficult. I know this from myself. When I speak to a person who is, say, an FDP politician, I already have sort of a mind that is preset saying, this person is not interested in the benefit of society, or at least not the way I think it should be done. Anyway, so overcome that, talk to each other more, talk to the other side more. And we need this because we need to grow the movement. We need to grow supporters. It doesn't help if we talk among ourselves all the time. We need to broaden the movement. And thirdly, but I don't have a solution for that, find ways to threaten politicians. They will only move if they are afraid of losing power. They are losing power when they don't do what their voters want. So that's one way to do it. But there's also other ways how we can threaten them, say, to expose them, telling them, telling truth to the lies that they are giving us, the rhetorics around climate action and 1.5 degrees and so forth, but they don't act accordingly, and expose this so that they look really bad in the public, in the media and the public and so forth. So you threaten them. That's my third point. I would have to have a fourth one because we were speaking about the new government, the potentially new government, including the Greens. Maybe it's also useful to spend the next week or two, I don't know how long this will last, to the Greens and tell them, look, don't give up too soon. You don't need to vote the Chancellor on the 6th of December, I think it's now scheduled for. You don't need to do that. Take your time. Don't get yourself put into the corner, but take the time you need to fight for the best possible outcome on climate in the new coalition treaty.
So as we many thanks, as we're very short on time now, I would love to give a short glimpse on this last question: who will lead on climate justice, while asking Mario Dietl for one last sentence that you want to share with the audience as a final statement.
First of all, I completely agree with Jan Kowalczyk. He has said many very smart things, and yeah, I think most important is that we fight for a good solution, even if it comes out to be a okay solution, because to fight for a okay solution will lead to a much worse situation. And even if I'm not the best example for that, don't lose hope. Hope is really important. And yeah, there will be a new chapter for politicians, I think, when we talk, when we discuss, even when I am discussing climate change with politicians from the CDU or the FDP, they will change, or they sometimes they change their positions, and that is what we need, and that on a bigger scale has so much power, and that power is what we need, and as well smart people like Jan Kovalczyk who tell great things and also talk with politicians, I think.
Okay, so thank you very much. We came to the end, and we want to leave the last word for Mustafa Chirima.
Sorry.
Maybe you want to have one slogan, one sentence that you want us to keep in mind about what you do. You're still muted, Mustafa.
Screen. So, okay. Yes, I think I'm really impressed with this discussion, and everything is going on well. And what I can only say is I only need people to line up behind me from what I started. And where I will end is not known, but I have already started it. So if we can come and line behind me, and as Jan said, I always post my things on social media. Now we have the website, savethesharenut.org. You can always log in and get our programs. Actually, I just tested this year, so the real thing is coming next year. That's when I'm going to be on my double foot. So you are all welcome to follow my programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this inspiration. I think that's what we really, really need to get involved and engaged and think about own ideas. So I really want to give a lot of thanks to everybody in the audience, to all of you listening and taking part in our discussion. And as we see, there's quite some good ideas, and I think we're all part of leading the case of climate justice further down the road. And I want to thank you for joining in today. Goodbye from